The sight of a woman staggering into the dusty yard of the Double R Ranch on that scorching July afternoon in 1882 was something Emmett Rollins would never forget. Her bare feet leaving small clouds of dirt with each unsteady step she took across the parched Arizona soil. He had been mending a section of fence near the main house when he spotted her, his hammer freezing mid-swing as he watched her collapse against the weathered wooden post that marked the entrance to his property. The sun beat down mercilessly on Florence, a small mining town nestled in the harsh landscape between Phoenix and Tucson, and this woman looked like she had walked straight through hell to get here. Emmett dropped his tools and ran toward her, his long legs covering the distance in seconds. Up close, he could see the damage the desert had done. Her feet were torn and bleeding, caked with dried blood and dust. Her dress, once probably a respectable calico print, hung in tatters around her thin frame. Sun had burned her face and arms an angry red, and her lips were cracked and bleeding from dehydration. "Madam," he said, kneeling beside her as she slumped to the ground. "Madam, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, and he caught a glimpse of green eyes before they closed again. She was young, probably not much older than 20, with dark auburn hair that had come loose from whatever pins had once held it in place. Without thinking twice, Emmett scooped her into his arms and carried her toward the house, surprised by how light she felt, like she had not eaten a proper meal in weeks. His ranch hand, Miguel, emerged from the barn and hurried over. "Senor Emmett, what happened?" "Do not know yet." "Get some water, cool but not cold, and find some clean cloths. Tell Maria I need her help in the house." Emmett kicked open the front door and carried the unconscious woman inside, laying her gently on the leather sofa in his front room. Maria, Miguel's wife who helped keep house for Emmett, came rushing in with her arms full of supplies. Together, they worked to make the stranger comfortable, cleaning the worst of the dirt from her face and getting small sips of water past her parched lips. "Her feet," Maria said softly, shaking her head. "She has walked many miles like this." Emmett looked down at the ruined soles of her feet and felt anger rise in his chest. What kind of situation would drive a woman to walk barefoot through the Arizona desert? He went to his bedroom and retrieved an old pair of boots that had belonged to his younger sister before she married and moved to California. Catherine had left several things behind, including these soft leather boots that had been custom-made for her small feet. When he returned to the front room, the woman's eyes were open, and she was looking around with obvious confusion and fear. "Easy now," Emmett said, keeping his voice low and calm like he would with a skittish horse. "You are safe here. This is the Double R Ranch just outside Florence. I am Emmett Rollins, and this is Maria. You collapsed at my gate." The woman's hand went to her throat and she tried to speak, but only a hoarse croak came out. Maria helped her take another sip of water. "Do not try to talk yet," Maria said gently. "You are very sick from the sun and the walking. Rest first." But the woman shook her head frantically, her eyes wide with what looked like terror. "Cannot stay," she managed to whisper. "He will find me." Emmett and Maria exchanged glances. "Who will find you?" Emmett asked. "My husband." The word came out like poison. "Wallace Foster. He will kill me if he finds me." The name meant nothing to Emmett, but the fear in her voice was real enough. "You are safe here," he said firmly. "Nobody is going to hurt you on my land. Now, what is your name?" She hesitated, as if even giving her name might give away her location. "Rose," she finally whispered. "Rose Foster." "Well, Rose Foster, you are going to stay right here until you are well enough to tell me what happened and what you need. Maria is going to take care of those feet, and then you are going to eat something and sleep. We can talk about everything else later." Rose looked like she wanted to argue, but exhaustion won out. She nodded weakly and let Maria begin the painful process of cleaning and bandaging her feet. While Maria worked, Emmett went to the kitchen and heated up some broth from the previous night's dinner. Rose needed food, but something gentle for her stomach. He found himself wondering about her story as he stirred the pot. A woman did not walk barefoot through the desert unless she was running from something terrible. At 28, Emmett had been running the Double R for 6 years, ever since his father died and left him the ranch. It was not a huge operation, but he had a good herd of cattle, some horses, and enough land to make a decent living. He had hired hands who respected him, and he had built a reputation in Florence as a fair man who kept his word. He had been too busy building his ranch to think much about finding a wife, though his mother had started making pointed comments about grandchildren in her last few letters from California. But something about the broken woman on his sofa called to him, in a way he could not explain. Maybe it was the vulnerability mixed with the determination he could see in her eyes. Maybe it was the fact that she had somehow survived what should have killed her. Or maybe it was simply that she needed help, and he had never been able to turn away from someone in need. When he returned with the broth, Maria had finished bandaging Rose's feet and had helped her into a clean nightgown that had also belonged to Catherine. Rose looked even younger now, cleaned up, her auburn hair brushed back from her face. "Thank you," Rose said, her voice still rough but stronger than before. "You did not have to help me." "Yes, I did," Emmett said simply, settling into the chair across from her with the bowl of broth. "Can you manage this yourself, or do you need help?" A flash of pride crossed her face. "I can manage." But her hands shook so badly when she reached for the bowl that Emmett knew she could not. Without commenting on it, he just dipped the spoon into the broth and held it out to her. After a moment's hesitation, Rose opened her mouth and let him feed her. They sat in silence for a while, Emmett patiently spooning broth while Rose ate slowly. Maria had discreetly left them alone, though Emmett knew she had not gone far. His housekeeper was protective of him and would be keeping a watchful eye on this stranger. "How long was I walking?" Rose asked after she had eaten about half the bowl. "I was hoping you could tell me that," Emmett replied. "Where did you come from?" Rose closed her eyes and Emmett could see her gathering the strength to tell her story. "Tucson. I left 3 days ago, I think. Maybe 4. Time got confused." Emmett felt his jaw tighten. Tucson was more than 60 miles away. The fact that she had survived the journey at all was a miracle. "Why did you run?" "Because staying would have killed me," Rose said simply. She opened her eyes and looked directly at him, and Emmett saw a strength there that belied her fragile appearance. "Wallace is not a good man. I knew that when I married him, but I was 17 and an orphan, and he seemed like my only option. For 3 years, I tried to be a good wife. I tried to make him happy, but nothing was ever good enough." She paused, and Emmett could see her hands clenching into fists beneath the blanket Maria had draped over her. 2 weeks ago, he came home drunk and beat me worse than he ever had before. I thought he was going to kill me that night. When he finally passed out, I knew I had to leave. But he kept the household money locked up and I had nothing of my own to sell. All I could do was walk away. "What about shoes?" Emmett asked quietly. A bitter smile crossed Rose's face. "He burned them." "About 6 months ago, I tried to leave once before, and he caught me before I made it out of town. When he brought me home, he burned every pair of shoes I owned. He said if I wanted to leave so badly, I could walk out barefoot and see how far I got." Rage, hot and fierce, flooded through Emmett. He had known cruel men in his life, but this kind of calculated cruelty toward a woman was beyond his understanding. "And you walked anyway." "What choice did I have?" Rose's voice was steady, but tears were sliding down her cheeks. "Stay and die eventually, or take a chance on the desert." At least the desert was honest about trying to kill me. Emmett set down the bowl and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Rose, I need you to understand something. You are safe here. I do not care if your husband comes looking for you or not. This is my land and I decide who stays and who goes. If you want to stay until you figure out what comes next, you are welcome here. I cannot pay you, Rose said. I have nothing. I am not asking for payment, Emmett said firmly. I am offering help because it is the right thing to do. Now you need to rest. We can figure out the details later. But Rose was shaking her head. You do not understand. Wallace has connections. His brother is a sheriff in Tucson. If he wants to find me, he will find me. And when he does, he will hurt anyone who helped me. Let him try, Emmett said, and there was steel in his voice. I have been taking care of myself and my land for a long time, Rose. I am not afraid of a bully who beats women. Something shifted in Rose's expression, a cautious hope that she was clearly trying not to feel. Why are you doing this? You do not even know me. Emmett considered the question. My father used to say that you can judge a man's character by how he treats those who cannot fight back. I guess that goes for women too. You fought back the only way you could, by leaving. That took more courage than most people have. The least I can do is give you a safe place to heal. Rose did not say anything, but fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. These were different from before, though. These were tears of relief, of a burden finally shared. Come on, Emmett said gently. Let us get you to a proper bed. You can sleep in my sister's old room. It has not been used in a while, but Maria keeps it clean. With Maria's help, they got Rose settled in Catherine's room, which still had some of her belongings, including more clothes that might fit Rose. As Emmett left the room, pulling the door mostly closed behind him, he heard Rose's breathing already evening out into sleep. In the hallway, Maria touched his arm. You have a good heart, Emmett, she said softly. But be careful. This woman comes with trouble following her. I know, Emmett said. But what was I supposed to do? Let her die at my gate, Maria smiled. No, you could never do that. I just want you to be ready for what might come. Over the next few days, Emmett discovered that Rose was tougher than she looked. Despite the pain from her healing feet, she insisted on making herself useful. Maria had to practically force her to stay off her feet for the first week, and even then, Rose found ways to help, mending clothes and helping prepare meals while sitting down. Emmett found himself drawn to the house more often than usual, checking on their guest, but also just wanting to talk to her. Rose was educated, he discovered. She had been raised in an orphanage run by nuns in Santa Fe, and they had taught her to read and write, along with mathematics and literature. She was well-spoken when she was not frightened, with a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard and made him laugh. How did you end up married to Wallace Foster? He asked one evening as they sat on the porch after dinner, watching the sun set over the desert. Rose was silent for a long moment. The orphanage only kept girls until they turned 18. After that, you had to make your own way. Some girls became teachers or governesses. Some married local men. I had hoped to become a teacher, but there were no positions available when I came of age. Wallace came through Santa Fe on business and attended a church social. He was charming that day, told me about his successful freight business in Tucson, about the home he could provide. The nuns thought it was a good match. When did you realize it was not? Our wedding night, Rose said quietly. He was drunk, and he was rough, and when I tried to ask him to be gentler, he hit me. Told me I was his property now and I would do what he said when he said it. It never got better after that. Emmett's hands clenched on the arms of his chair. No man has the right to treat a woman that way. Try telling that to a judge, Rose said bitterly. I went to the law once, about a year into the marriage. The The deputy laughed at me, said a man was entitled to discipline his wife however he saw fit, as long as he did not kill her. Wallace made sure I paid for that visit. They sat in silence for a while, the desert cooling around them as night fell. Finally, Emmett said, "What do you want to do, Rose? Long term, I mean. You can stay here as long as you need, but eventually you will need a plan." Rose looked down at her hands, which were twisted in her lap. She was wearing one of Catherine's dresses, a simple blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes. The burns on her face had healed, revealing smooth skin with a scatter of freckles across her nose. In the weeks since she had arrived, she had gained weight, and color had returned to her cheeks. She was, Emmett had to admit, beautiful. "I suppose I need to find work somewhere," Rose said. "Maybe as a seamstress or a housekeeper, somewhere far from Tucson where Wallace would not think to look for me. California, maybe, or Colorado." The thought of Rose leaving made Emmett's chest tighten in a way he did not want to examine too closely. "You could stay here," he heard himself say. "I mean, the ranch could use help. Maria is not getting any younger, and there is plenty of work. I could pay you a fair wage, and you would have a safe place to live." Rose turned to look at him, surprise clear on her face. "You would do that? Why not? You are a hard worker, even with your feet still healing. And like I said, we could use the help." It was not the whole truth, but Emmett was not ready to examine his real reasons too closely. "What about Wallace?" Rose asked. "If he finds me here, it would bring trouble to your door." "Rose, if he was going to find you, he would have by now," Emmett said, more confidently than he felt. "It has been almost a month since you left Tucson. A man who cared that much would have already come looking. My guess is he figured the desert killed you, or he decided you were not worth the trouble of tracking down." He could see Rose turning this over in her mind, hope warring with fear. "I would earn my keep," she said finally. "I would not take charity." "I am not offering charity," Emmett said firmly. "I am offering honest work for honest pay. If you want the job, it is yours." A slow smile spread across Rose's face, the first genuine smile Emmett had seen from her. It transformed her entire face, making her look younger and lighter. "Then I accept." They shook hands on it, and Emmett tried to ignore the way his skin tingled where it touched hers. Over the following weeks, Rose settled into life at the Double R. She was true to her word about earning her keep, taking over many of the household tasks from Maria, and even helping with some of the lighter ranch work. She had a way with the horses, Emmett noticed, a gentle patience that calmed even the most skittish animals. They fell into an easy routine. Emmett would come in from working the ranch to find dinner ready and Rose waiting to hear about his day. They would eat together, talking about everything and nothing. Rose was curious about the ranch, about Arizona, about Emmett's life. In turn, she slowly began to open up about her own past, about the orphanage, about the dreams she had once had. "I wanted to see the ocean," she told him one night. "The nuns had a book with pictures of the Pacific, and I used to stare at it for hours. All that water stretching as far as the eye could see, I could not even imagine it." "I have seen it," Emmett said. "When I went to visit Catherine in San Francisco, it is something, all right, loud and wild and beautiful. Will you tell me about it?" Rose asked, leaning forward with an eagerness that made her look even younger than her 20 years. So Emmett described the ocean, the way the waves crashed against the shore, the smell of salt in the air, the cry of the gulls. Rose listened with rapt attention, and Emmett found himself embellishing the story, wanting to keep that light in her eyes. It was Miguel who first pointed out what was becoming obvious to everyone, except Emmett and Rose themselves. "You are falling in love with her," Miguel said bluntly one afternoon as he and Emmett were working on breaking a new horse. Emmett nearly fell off the fence rail he was sitting on. What? No, I am just helping her out. Miguel gave him a look that said he was not fooled. Emmett, my friend, I have known you for 6 years. I have never seen you look at a woman the way you look at Miss Rose, and she looks at you the same way, even if she does not realize it yet. She is running from a bad marriage, Emmett protested. The last thing she needs is another man trying to stake a claim on her. Maybe, Miguel said. Or maybe what she needs is a good man to show her what love is supposed to look like, but you will not know unless you talk to her. Emmett did not respond, but Miguel's words stayed with him. Was he falling in love with Rose? When had she stopped being a responsibility and started being something more? He thought about how his day felt incomplete until he saw her smile, about how he found himself listening for her laugh, about how he had started staying up late just to have more time talking with her on the porch. Maybe Miguel was right, but knowing his own feelings and doing something about them were two different things. Rose was healing, but she still had nightmares sometimes. He would hear her cry out in the night, and he would lie awake in his own room, wanting to go to her but knowing it would not be appropriate. She was learning to trust again, learning that not all men were like Wallace Foster. The last thing Emmett wanted was to rush her or make her feel pressured. So he waited and he watched, and he let their friendship deepen naturally. It was Rose who finally pushed things forward, though not in a way Emmett expected. They were in town one Saturday morning in late September. Emmett had business at the bank, and Rose had come along to pick up some supplies at the general store. They had split up to handle their separate errands, agreeing to meet back at the wagon in an hour. Emmett was just finishing up at the bank when he heard a commotion outside. Raised voices and then Rose's voice, sharp with fear. He was out the door in seconds, his hand automatically going to the gun at his hip. What he saw made his blood run cold. A man had Rose by the arm, gripping her so tightly that Emmett could see the white of his knuckles even from across the street. Rose was trying to pull away, her face pale with terror. The man was tall and heavy-set, with dark hair and a cruel slash of a mouth. He was well dressed in a suit that was dusty from travel. "I said you are coming home with me, Rose," the man was saying, his voice carrying across the street. "I am your husband and you will do as I say. Wallace Foster, it had to be." Emmett was moving before he fully registered his own decision, crossing the street in long strides. A small crowd had gathered, people watching the scene with curiosity but not intervening. That was the way of things. Most folks did not get involved in marital disputes. But Emmett was not most folks. "Let her go," he said, his voice low and dangerous as he stopped a few feet from Foster. Foster turned, still gripping Rose's arm. "This is none of your business, friend. This is my wife and I am taking her home." "I said let her go." Emmett's hand hovered near his gun and Foster's eyes tracked the movement. "You want to draw on me over a woman?" Foster sneered. "She must be giving you something special to risk your life for her." Emmett's vision went red at the implication, but he kept his voice steady. "I am going to say this one more time. Let go of her arm, get on your horse, and ride out of town. If you do that, we can all walk away from this. And if I do not," Foster's grip on Rose tightened, making her wince, "then I will make you." Emmett took another step forward. "Your choice." For a long moment, the two men stared at each other. Emmett could see Foster calculating, trying to decide if Emmett was bluffing. Finally, Foster shoved Rose away from him hard enough that she stumbled. Emmett caught her, steadying her against his side. "You can have her," Foster spat. "She is not worth the trouble anyway. Useless in every way a woman should be useful. But you should know she is still my wife, legal and binding. That makes you an adulterer and her a whore if you are taking her to your bed." "Rose is an employee at my ranch, nothing more," Emmett said, though the lie tasted bitter. And if she is your wife, she is so in name only. A real husband does not beat his wife bloody and burn her shoes." Foster's face darkened. "A man has rights over his property." "A wife is not property," Emmett said. "And even if she was, you gave up any rights when you tried to kill her. Now get out of town before I decide to do something about that gun you are wearing." Foster's hand twitched toward his own weapon, but he must have seen something in Emmett's eyes that made him reconsider. With a final glare at Rose, he turned and stalked toward a horse tied up outside the saloon. "This is not over," he called back over his shoulder. "I will be back with the law. You are harboring my wife, and I will see you hang for it." Then he was mounted and riding out of town, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Emmett became aware that Rose was shaking against his side. He turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Are you all right? Did he hurt you?" "I am fine," Rose said, but her voice was trembling. "Emmett, I am so sorry. I should have stayed at the ranch. I should have known he might come looking." "Hey, no," Emmett said firmly. "You have nothing to apologize for. He is the one who should be sorry." He looked around at the crowd, which was slowly dispersing now that the excitement was over. "Come on, let us get you home." They collected their supplies in silence and headed back to the ranch. Rose sat stiffly beside him on the wagon seat, her hands clenched in her lap. Emmett wanted to comfort her, but he did not know what to say. Foster's words kept echoing in his head. "She is still my wife, legal and binding." It was true. As much as Emmett hated it, Rose was legally married to Wallace Foster, and that complicated everything. Back at the ranch, Maria took one look at Rose's face and swept her inside, leaving Emmett to deal with the wagon and the supplies. He took his time unhitching the horses and storing everything, trying to sort through his thoughts. Foster had found Rose. That meant they needed to figure out what to do next. Would Foster really come back with the law? Probably not, Emmett decided. If Foster's brother was a sheriff in Tucson, he had no jurisdiction in Florence, and any lawman would want to know why Rose had run in the first place. Foster's abuse might not be enough to void the marriage in the eyes of the law, but it would not make him look good. Still, the fact remained that Rose was married. And as long as she was married, there was nothing Emmett could do about the feelings that had been growing in his chest for months now. He found Rose in the kitchen, helping Maria prepare dinner. She looked up when he entered, her eyes still showing traces of fear. "Can we talk?" Emmett asked. Rose nodded and followed him out to the porch. They sat in their usual chairs, but the comfortable ease that normally existed between them was gone, replaced by an awkward tension. "What are you going to do?" Emmett asked finally. "I do not know," Rose admitted. "I cannot go back to him, Emmett. I would rather die." "You are not going back to him," Emmett said firmly, "and you are not going to die. But Rose, we need to figure out a plan. As long as you are legally married to him, he has a claim on you." "I know." Rose's voice was small. "I have thought about getting a divorce, but they are so rare and so expensive. I do not have the money, and I do not know if I could find a judge who would grant one anyway." Emmett had been thinking about this on the ride home. What if Foster died? Rose's head snapped up, her eyes wide. "What?" "I am not saying I am going to kill him," Emmett said quickly. But he did not look like a healthy man. He was drinking in the middle of the day, and men like that tend to come to bad ends. If he died, you would be a widow, free to make your own choices. "That could take years," Rose said. "And in the meantime, he could come back. He could try to force me to return, or he could hurt you for helping me." "Let him try," Emmett said. "Rose, I need you to hear me. I am not going to let anything happen to you. I do not care what the law says. I do not care about his supposed rights as a husband. You are under my protection, and that means something." Rose was looking at him with an expression he could not quite read. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why do you care so much?" This was it. Emmett could deflect, could give some vague answer about doing the right thing, or he could tell her the truth and risk everything. He chose the truth. "Because I have fallen in love with you," Emmett said. The words came out steady and sure, despite the way his heart was pounding. "I did not mean for it to happen, and I know the timing is terrible. You are healing from what Foster did to you, and you are still legally tied to him. But you asked why I care, and that is why. I love you, Rose. I love your strength and your courage. I love the way you laugh at my terrible jokes. I love how you are gentle with the horses and how you hum when you cook. I love everything about you, and I cannot stand the thought of you being hurt again." Rose was staring at him, tears streaming down her face. "Emmett, you do not have to say anything," Emmett continued quickly. "I know you probably do not feel the same way, and that is all right. I just needed you to know why I am going to keep fighting for you, no matter what Foster or the law or anyone else says." "You fool," Rose said, but she was smiling through her tears. "You complete and utter fool." "Of course I feel the same way." It was Emmett's turn to stare. "What?" Rose stood up and crossed to him, taking his hands in hers. "I have been in love with you for months," she said. "I just did not think I had the right to feel that way given everything. You saved my life, Emmett. You gave me a home and safety and kindness, and somewhere along the way you gave me your heart too, and I gave you mine without even realizing it." Emmett surged to his feet, cupping Rose's face in his hands. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Please," Rose whispered. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, both of them aware of how much this moment meant. Emmett tried to pour everything he felt into it, all the love and longing and promise of protection. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "I want to marry you," Emmett said. "Not now, not while you are still tied to Foster. But someday when you are free, I want to marry you properly. I want to give you my name and make you my wife in truth, not just in my heart." "I want that too," Rose said. "More than anything. But Emmett, how? Even if Wallace dies, it could be years before we know about it, and I cannot ask you to wait that long." "You are not asking. I am offering," Emmett said. "I would wait forever if that is what it took." They stood there on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms as the sun set behind them. For the first time since Rose had walked barefoot into his life, Emmett felt like the future was something to look forward to rather than something to worry about. But that peace was short-lived. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived from Tucson. It was addressed to Rose, and the handwriting was unfamiliar. With shaking hands, she opened it while Emmett stood by her side in the kitchen. Inside was a brief note from a lawyer named Samuel Harrison. Wallace Foster was dead. He had been killed in a drunken brawl outside a saloon 3 days after his visit to Florence. There had been an investigation, but it was ruled self-defense by the man who shot him. As Foster's widow, Rose was entitled to claim his estate, which included his freight business and a small amount of savings. Rose read the letter twice, then looked up at Emmett with stunned eyes. "He is dead. He is dead," Emmett repeated, still trying to process the news. "Rose, you are free." Rose started to laugh, a slightly hysterical sound that turned into tears. Emmett pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried. He understood. This was not grief for Wallace Foster. This was the release of 3 years of fear and pain and hopelessness. "I am free," Rose said when she finally stopped crying. "Emmett, I am actually free." "What do you want to do about the estate?" Emmett asked. "You could go to Tucson, claim what is yours." Rose shook her head firmly. "I do not want anything that belonged to him. Whatever he left can go to his brother or be sold to pay his debts. I just want to be done with that part of my life." "Are you sure?" Emmett asked. "That money could give you independence." "I have independence," Rose said, looking up at him. I have a job I am good at, a place I belong, and a man who loves me. That is more than money could ever buy." Emmett kissed her forehead. "Well then, I guess there is only one question left." "What is that?" He got down on one knee right there in the kitchen, taking her hand in his. "Rose Foster, will you do me the honor of becoming Rose Rollins? Will you marry me?" Rose's face split into the biggest smile he had ever seen. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. They were married 6 weeks later on a cool November morning in the little church in Florence. Maria and Miguel stood up with them, along with a few friends from town. Rose wore a dress that Maria had helped her make, a simple white cotton with lace at the collar. Emmett wore his best suit, the one he had bought for his father's funeral and never thought he would wear for something happy. The ceremony was short and sweet. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Emmett kissed Rose in front of God and everyone, not caring who saw how much he loved her. The ranch hands had organized a small reception back at the Double R. Someone had brought a fiddle, and there was dancing in the yard as the sun set. Emmett held Rose close as they swayed to the music, marveling at how much his life had changed in just 5 months. "Happy?" he asked, his lips close to her ear. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Rose said. "Thank you for giving me boots." Emmett laughed. He had almost forgotten about those boots, the ones that had belonged to Catherine. Rose still wore them sometimes, though Emmett had bought her several new pairs. But she said those first boots were special, a reminder of the kindness of a stranger who became the love of her life. "Thank you for walking into my ranch," Emmett replied. "Best thing that ever happened to me." As the party wound down and the guests departed, Emmett and Rose stood together on the porch, looking out over the land that was now truly theirs together. "What do you think the future holds?" Rose asked, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Whatever we want it to," Emmett said. "We will build this ranch together, make it something great, maybe have some children someday if you want that." "I do want that," Rose said softly. "I want to fill this house with love and laughter. I want our children to grow up knowing they are safe and wanted." "They will," Emmett promised. "I will make sure of it." The first year of their marriage was everything Emmett could have hoped for and more. Rose threw herself into ranch life with enthusiasm, learning to ride properly and even helping with the cattle roundups. She had a head for numbers and started keeping the ranch books, finding ways to save money and increase profits that Emmett had never thought of. But more than that, she brought joy to the Double R. The ranch hands adored her, especially after she started cooking for them on special occasions. The house that had been just a place to sleep became a real home, filled with Rose's touches. Curtains in the windows, flowers from the garden she planted, the smell of fresh bread baking, and their love continued to grow. Every day, Emmett found new things to love about his wife. The way she sang while she worked, the fierce concentration on her face when she was solving a problem, the softness in her eyes when she looked at him, the passion in her touch when they were alone. Rose bloomed in their marriage, becoming more confident and more herself with each passing month. The haunted look that had been in her eyes when she first arrived was gone, replaced by peace and happiness. In the spring of 1884, Rose discovered she was pregnant. She told Emmett over breakfast one morning, her eyes shining with excitement and nervousness. "A baby," Emmett said, the news taking a moment to sink in. Then he was on his feet, sweeping Rose into his arms and spinning her around. "We are going to have a baby, careful," Rose laughed. "I am going to be sick if you keep spinning me." Emmett set her down gently, his hands going to her still flat stomach. "Is it really true?" Maria helped me count. "I am about 2 months along, I think. The baby should come in the fall." They spent the rest of the day making plans, talking about names and whether they should add on to the house and how they would manage the ranch with a baby. Emmett was torn between excitement and terror. He was going to be a father. What if he was not good at it? What if something went wrong? But Rose seemed confident, and her confidence helped steady him. "We will figure it out together," she said, "just like we figure out everything else." The pregnancy was not easy. Rose was sick for the first few months, and Emmett worried constantly. But as summer came and Rose's belly grew round, she seemed to gain strength. She insisted on continuing to work, though Emmett and Maria conspired to keep her from doing anything too strenuous. On a crisp October morning, their son was born. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Emmett thought he might lose his mind from worry. But finally, he heard the cry of a baby, and Maria was placing a tiny, squalling bundle in his arms. "A boy," she said, smiling. "A healthy, strong boy." Emmett looked down at his son, at the tiny face scrunched up in outrage, and felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. "He is perfect," he whispered. "Let me see him," Rose said weakly from the bed. Emmett carefully carried their son to Rose, placing him in her arms. She looked exhausted but radiant as she gazed down at the baby. "Hello, little one," she said softly. "We have been waiting for you." They named him James, after Emmett's father. James Rollins came into the world healthy and loud, and he changed everything. The ranch hands were worse than old women, stopping by the house constantly to see the baby. Miguel carved a beautiful cradle, and Maria knitted more blankets and clothes than one baby could ever need. But it was watching Rose as a mother that truly moved Emmett. She was patient and loving, everything her own mother had presumably not had the chance to be. She sang to James, told him stories, showered him with the kind of unconditional love she had never received as a child. "You are an amazing mother," Emmett told her one night as they stood over the cradle, watching their son sleep. "I had a good example," Rose said, taking his hand. "You showed me what real love looks like, Emmett, how to give it and how to receive it. I am just passing that on to our son." The years flowed by like water. James grew into a sturdy, curious boy with his mother's green eyes and his father's stubborn streak. When he was 3, Rose became pregnant again, and this time she gave birth to twin daughters they named Emma and Grace. The house was chaos with 3 small children, but it was the kind of chaos that Emmett loved. The ranch prospered under their joint management. They expanded the herd, built new outbuildings, hired more hands. Rose's careful bookkeeping meant they always had money set aside for emergencies, and Emmett's reputation for fair dealing brought them good prices for their cattle. But more than the material success, the Double R became known as a place of kindness. When other families fell on hard times, Emmett and Rose were there with help. They gave jobs to men who needed a fresh start, took in children who had nowhere else to go, shared their good fortune with those less fortunate. "You are making a difference," Rose told Emmett one evening as they sat on the porch, watching their children play in the yard. James was 7 now, the twins were 4, and Rose was round with their 4th child. "We are making a difference," Emmett corrected. "I could not do any of this without you." Rose smiled and took his hand. "Do you ever think about that day I walked into your ranch, how different things could have been?" "All the time," Emmett admitted. "If you had collapsed somewhere else, if someone else had found you, if I had not been there that day. But I try not to dwell on the what-ifs. I am just grateful for what is." "So am I," Rose said. "You know, when I was walking through that desert, dying of thirst and pain, I did not think I would survive. And even if I did not think I would ever be happy again. I just wanted to be free. But you gave me so much more than freedom, Emmett. You gave me a home. You gave me love. You gave me a family. You gave me everything I did not even know I wanted." "You gave me the same things," Emmett said, pulling her close. I was just going through the motions before you arrived, building the ranch but not really living. You brought life and color and meaning to everything. You made this place a home instead of just a house. You made me better than I was." Their fourth child, another son they named Thomas, was born in the spring. And then 2 years later came another daughter, Catherine, named for Emmett's sister. 5 children filled the house with noise and laughter, and the kind of beautiful chaos that comes from a full and happy life. As the children grew, Rose made sure they all learned to read and write, using the education the nuns had given her to teach her own children. She set up a small school room in the house, and word got around until other families in the area were asking if their children could join. Before long, Rose was teaching a dozen children, and the Double R had become a center of learning as well as a working ranch. Emmett watched with pride as his wife flourished in her role as teacher. She had always been smart, but now she had the chance to share that intelligence with the next generation. And the children adored her, not just because she was patient and kind, but because she made learning fun. "You should have been a teacher from the beginning," Emmett told her one evening as she graded papers at the kitchen table. "Maybe," Rose said. "But then I would not have had you or our children or this life. I think things worked out the way they were supposed to." When James turned 15, he started working the ranch alongside Emmett, learning the business from the ground up. He was a natural cowboy with a way with horses that reminded Emmett of Rose. The twins, Emma and Grace, were different as night and day. Emma was serious and studious, already talking about becoming a doctor. Grace was wild and free-spirited, more comfortable on horseback than in a dress. Thomas and Catherine were still young, but they were growing fast, each developing their own personalities. "We did good," Emmett said one night as he and Rose lay in bed, listening to the house settle around them. All the children were finally asleep, and they had a rare moment of quiet. "We did," Rose agreed, snuggling against his side. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life. That I get to wake up every morning next to you in this house with our children. It feels like a dream." "If it is a dream, I never want to wake up," Emmett said, kissing the top of her head. They had been married for 18 years now, and Emmett loved Rose more than he had on their wedding day. Time had only deepened their bond, adding layers of shared experience and weathered storms and small daily kindnesses. They had argued and made up, struggled and celebrated, built a life together that was rich and full and meaningful. "Do you have any regrets?" Rose asked quietly. Emmett thought about it seriously. "No," he said finally. "Not a single one. You?" "Only that I did not leave Tucson sooner," Rose said. "But even that brought me here, so maybe it was not time wasted." "Everything that happened before brought you to me," Emmett said. "So in a strange way, I am grateful for all of it, even the hard parts. Though I would still like to punch Wallace Foster for what he did to you," Rose laughed. "He has been dead for nearly 20 years, Emmett. I think you can let that go." "Maybe," Emmett said, "but I will never let go of how angry it makes me that he hurt you, even if it does not matter anymore." "It does not matter," Rose said firmly. "That life is so far behind me now that it feels like it happened to someone else. I am not that scared girl anymore. I am Rose Rollins, rancher's wife, mother of 5, teacher, and the luckiest woman in Arizona." The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges. James fell in love with a girl from town, the daughter of the general store owner, and married her when he was 21. Emmett and Rose attended the wedding with pride and a year later welcomed their first grandchild, a little girl named Rose after her grandmother. "A grandmother," Rose marveled, holding the baby. "I am a grandmother." "You are beautiful," Emmett said, watching her with the baby. At 38, Rose was even more beautiful to him than she had been at 20. Time had added fine lines around her eyes and threads of silver in her auburn hair, but to Emmett, she was perfect. The twins grew up and went their separate ways. Emma did indeed become a doctor, one of the first women to do so, moving to San Francisco for her training. Grace married a cowboy from a neighboring ranch and stayed close to home. Thomas took over more of the ranch operations as Emmett got older, showing the same good judgment and fairness that his father had. And little Catherine, who was not so little anymore at 14, was showing signs of being as good a teacher as her mother. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Emmett and Rose hosted a huge celebration at the ranch. All their children came home, bringing grandchildren with them. Friends from all over the territory attended. It was a testament to the life they had built, the community they had fostered, the love they had shared. As the party wound down and the guests departed, Emmett found Rose standing in the spot where he had first seen her all those years ago, near the fence post where she had collapsed. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "I was remembering that day," Rose said. "I was so scared and so hurt and so sure I was going to die. And then this cowboy came running over and he looked at me like I mattered. Like I was worth saving." "You were worth saving," Emmett said. "You were worth everything." Rose turned in his arms to face him. "I walked barefoot into your ranch with nothing but the rags on my back and a prayer that someone would help me, and you gave me boots." "Just an old pair of Catherine's," Emmett said, smiling at the memory. "You gave me so much more than boots," Rose said. "You gave me safety and kindness and a home. You gave me time to heal. You gave me friendship and then love. You gave me children and a purpose and a life beyond anything I could have imagined. And then you gave me your name, making me yours in every way that matters. You were mine from the moment I saw you," Emmett said. "I just did not know it yet." They stood there together as the sun set, the same as they had done countless times over the years. But this time felt different, weighted with significance. They were older now, their children grown, their life together more than half lived. But the love between them was as strong as ever, maybe stronger for having survived the test of time. "I love you, Emmett Rollins," Rose said. "Thank you for seeing me all those years ago. Thank you for choosing to help when you could have turned away. Thank you for loving me." "I love you, Rose Rollins," Emmett replied. "Thank you for being brave enough to walk into my life. Thank you for staying. Thank you for building this beautiful life with me." They kissed as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting and true. More years passed, bringing the inevitable changes that come with age. Emmett's back started bothering him, and he had to give up some of the harder ranch work. Rose's eyesight began to fail, making teaching difficult. But they adapted, finding new ways to be useful, new roles to fill. Thomas took over the ranch completely when Emmett turned 60, running it with the same values his parents had instilled in him. The Double R remained a working ranch, but also a gathering place, a school, a community center. Rose's influence lived on in the children she had taught, many of whom were now teaching children of their own. Grandchildren became great-grandchildren. The family grew and spread out, but they always came home to the Double R for holidays and celebrations. And at the center of it all were Emmett and Rose, the foundation on which everything else was built. On a warm spring morning in 1914, Emmett and Rose sat together on the porch, watching their great-grandchildren play in the yard. Emmett was 72 now, Rose 62. They had been married for 32 years, together for even longer. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" Rose asked. "When I woke up on your sofa, I said you were safe," Emmett replied. "That you were on my land and I decided who stayed and who went." "You did more than keep me safe," Rose said. "You gave me a life. A real, full, beautiful life." "We gave each other that," Emmett said, taking her hand. It was wrinkled now, marked by age and work, but still the hand he loved to hold. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes after decades together. Emmett thought about the journey that had brought them here, from that desperate moment when a barefoot woman walked into his ranch to this peaceful afternoon surrounded by family. He thought about the boots he had given her, a simple act of kindness that had changed both their lives. He thought about all the moments in between, the big ones and the small ones, the joys and the sorrows, the daily acts of love that had woven their lives together into something beautiful and strong. "I would do it all again," Emmett said suddenly. "Every moment exactly the same." Rose smiled and squeezed his hand. "So would I." As the sun climbed higher in the sky and the sound of children's laughter filled the air, Emmett Rollins looked at his wife and knew that he was the luckiest man who ever lived. He had found his other half in the most unlikely way, and together they had built something that would outlast them both. The Double R Ranch would continue on, passed down through the generations, a legacy of love and hard work and kindness. The story of the woman who walked barefoot into the ranch and the cowboy who gave her boots would be told and retold, becoming family legend. And at the heart of it all would always be this simple truth: that love, real love, had the power to heal and transform and create something beautiful from even the most broken beginnings. Years continued their steady march forward, each season bringing its own changes. Emmett and Rose grew older together, their steps slower but their love undiminished. They celebrated their 40th anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, a family tree that had grown from the love between a desperate woman and the cowboy who saved her. When Emmett was 78, his health began to fail. His heart was giving out, the doctor said. There was nothing to be done but make him comfortable. Rose never left his side during those final weeks, holding his hand and telling him stories of their life together. "I am not ready to go," Emmett whispered one night, his voice weak. "I do not want to leave you." "You are not leaving me," Rose said firmly, though tears were streaming down her face. "You will just be waiting for me, and I will see you again, I promise." "I love you," Emmett said. "I have loved you since the moment I saw you walking into my ranch." "I love you too," Rose replied. "Thank you for giving me everything." Emmett Rollins passed away peacefully the next morning, with Rose holding his hand and the sun streaming through the window. He was buried on a hill overlooking the ranch, in a spot where he could always watch over the land he had loved. Rose lived for another 8 years, still sharp and active despite her advanced age. She spent her time with her family, telling them stories about their grandfather, making sure his memory lived on. She wrote down their story, all of it, from the day she walked barefoot into the Double R to their final moments together. She wanted her descendants to know where they came from, what their family was built on. On a quiet autumn evening in 1922, Rose Rollins passed away in her sleep. She was 70 years old and had lived a full and beautiful life. She was buried next to Emmett on the hill, and the whole town of Florence came to pay their respects to the woman who had touched so many lives. The Double R Ranch continued on, passed down through Thomas to his children and eventually his grandchildren. The story of Emmett and Rose became the foundation of the family's identity, a reminder of the power of kindness and the strength of true love. The boots that Emmett had given Rose that first day were kept in a place of honor, preserved and protected through the generations. They became a symbol of the family's values. that sometimes the smallest acts of compassion can change everything, that love can bloom in the most unlikely places, and that a life built on kindness and hard work will endure. On the ranch house wall hung a photograph taken on Emmett and Rose's 50th anniversary, one of the last pictures of them together. In it, they sat on their beloved porch, hands clasped, looking at each other with the same love that had sustained them through 5 decades of marriage. And beneath the photograph was a plaque with words that Rose had written herself. In 1882, a woman walked barefoot into this ranch, running from death and searching for hope. A cowboy gave her boots and later gave her his name. But more than that, he gave her love and she gave him the same in return. From that love grew a family, a legacy, and a life that proved that kindness matters, that courage is rewarded, and that true love never dies. And so the story of Emmett and Rose Rollins lived on, passed down through the generations, a testament to the truth that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin with the simplest acts of human kindness. The Double R Ranch stood as a monument to their love, a place where family gathered and stories were told, and the memory of two people who loved each other against all odds continued to inspire those who came after. The land that had witnessed Rose's desperate arrival and Emmett's compassionate response continued to thrive, nurtured by the descendants of the love that had started it all. And somewhere, in whatever comes after, Emmett and Rose were together again, their love eternal, their story complete, their legacy living on in every person who called the Double R Ranch home.